All right, I believe we're live. So it's been a while since I've made a video about a housing crisis, and today we're going to be talking about that in relation to low-income housing, Section 8 housing, and so on. This will not be for fair markets and so on, but these two are very much intertwined. Anytime we talk about properties and homes, and we look at the market as it is right now, where it's was last year red hot, this year it's white hot. So what happens when you take something and you melt it. It's called a meltdown, and that's very much what the market is kind of doing right now. And one thing that's been indicating this very well, especially for the clients I deal with, and let me just get into introductions real quick before we skip to the main content. But I am the owner of Section8Consulting.com. I work with low income individuals, probably over 1,000 every year. And our necessary goal is to achieve helping people with disabilities that are seniors and so on get housing. And I'm watching this market just get to an unbelievable height. So let's talk about some of the dynamics and how you could potentially avert some of the problems that come along with this. And by the way, this is a live video. As it stands right now, it is 3 p.m. in Texas on 3/22. Probably in about an hour, the video won't be live anymore. You'll be watching a recording, so you can chat with me in here if you'd like. So, in my candy, I see is commented in the channel, and can you get a personal loan while on Section 8? I believe so. You can do whatever you want to when it comes to loans, as long as it isn't too much money. So, looking at the market last year, we went up 18%, and well, right now it's climbing at a unbelievable rate, and I think that between now and May, it will climb another 20 to 30%. So May to May, 2022 to 2023, we're probably looking at almost a 40% on the market. Now, how does that affect those of you that are renters? And that's what all this is about. When you take a gigantic market full of houses and you jam pack it with investors that buy all these houses, we had a lot of housing out there that was low income, right? So, but now those low income houses, which were kind of ratty, not so good. Now those houses are actually worth their weight in gold. And so what's happening is a lot of homes that were out there where landlords were using, use them as low income properties and having low income tenants there. There's more an incentive to sell. Once the property is sold, it doesn't really re-enter the market again, really for Section 8 or so on for low-income housing. So we're seeing a astronomical amount of properties leave the market. As you know, from 2000 till now, it's been a descending market, which means we're wiping out 500,000 houses every year since then, and we're reaching a critical mass with this because anybody's got a property is raising rents, and we went through a system of things through the pandemic. Clearly, people weren't able to pay the rent, whether you had a voucher or most people had a job. A lot of people couldn't. In fact, we tried to foreclose on around 8 million people. That's my understanding. Additionally, with renters, we tried to evict around 40 million. And now there's a surgence of people, a tidal wave of people that are right now it's spring. And from spring to the end of summer, it's a nightmare. People are out here and they're looking to rent, and landlords are raising what used to be the landlords used to raise rent every 3 to 5 years. Then we entered the pandemic and they were doing it every year to keep pace. And now landlords have figured out with most housing authorities they can raise rent every 6 months. And so now they're raising and doubling rents at an unbelievable pace. The houses that used to be for the low income market are now exiting because now what was $200,000 house is now $1 million house. And so we're seeing the market have a meltdown. Now, does this mean it's a meltdown for those of you that are just out there getting a loan for a home? No, it means that people that literally need these homes at an affordable rate cannot get them, and I'm seeing that play out quite a bit. Second to that, I'm seeing one other thing that I have not ever seen in over 20 years, and that is the fact that around 70% of the housing authorities are closed. People have inundated housing authorities heavily, and I'm watching the pace escalate at unbelievable rates. And so I know with my own clients, we're reaching a point where when I used to do consulting work with people for about a month or so, it's no longer sufficient. It's actually climbing out of that. And in fact, probably, let's see, January, February, March, April, probably April 1st, I will no longer offer month-long casework because it's becoming an impossibility to help clients inside that time range. It's, we're looking at dynamics now where, I used to be dealing with clients in weeks and possibly a month, and then worst case scenario, 90 days. Now we're looking at around 6 months. And to be frank, I just have to change the way that I operate as a business because of that. Because you can't sell people fantasies. That's the reality. And for those of you that are struggling with housing, that's what we face right now. Um, and of course, now that we're in spring, this is when it gets super hot, and then of course it reaches its ultimate height, as I mentioned, in May in the summer. And at that point, it's going to leave the market pretty ravished. And the reason a lot of housing authorities are closed is not because of a pandemic anymore. That was the first reason last year. The reason they're closed now is they have nothing left. They're burning through federal funds at such a rapid pace. As an example, the city of Seattle had 1,400 vouchers. They couldn't even get people to come in to get them. Now they have nothing. States like California were inundated so badly that around 200,000 people wanted vouchers in the state, and there have never been published 200,000 vouchers in the history or in the universe. And so we're reaching these points of climax where it's an impossibility there. Florida is another one, a domino that's falling currently. It's the state of Florida in low-income housing. I believe that market is now reaching its height and will be an inconceivable state to live in for those of you that are in a low income without great difficulty. So I would recommend, if you live in the state of California and you live in the state of Florida and you're in low income housing, you better stay in place. This is not the time to shop around. And as we see it escalate, it will continue through 2022. It will lighten its load, I think, around November, and then it will pick up around mid-January 2023. So this is, I guess, a quaint warning for a lot of you that this is not just a crisis, it's a real meltdown for low-income housing. And yes, we received a lot of money through Congress. The problem with that is a lot of it didn't get utilized because politicians wanted to argue across the aisles. And so a lot of that money ended up being pulled back to the federal government, and they decided to spend it on potholes and roads. Okay? So rather than actually address the bigger part of housing, vast portion of that money went underutilized, and so they pulled it back. Even as I talk about Los Angeles and their housing authority was recently sued, they actually set on around $6 million and did nothing with it. Now here's a county that is probably the worst in the nation when it comes to low-income housing and vouchers, and they just simply sat on the money while the pandemic sat there and ruined a bunch of lives and mismanaged it, and now they're in a great deal of trouble with the OIG and several others, because of that. And so mismanagement's a big deal. So this is the warning to anybody watching. You could take it for whatever it's worth. If you are a low-income individual and you're dealing with housing, you better step on the gas, because probably around the summer, I'm probably not going to offer services for a while, because with the casework, there simply won't be anything to get. Or the times will be too exasperated. So I'm really having to look at that, because we are at this point, the flood of people that contact me on a daily basis are reaching crazy levels. Of course, I try to help as many people as I can, but I cannot work 22 hours a day. So anyways, I'm going to move on to comments real quick. There's just a few here. I guess this video hasn't hit the big time yet, but good Redmond, how are you doing? He commented, while on Section 8, are landlords limited annually to how much they can increase the rent? No, not really. I mean, it's a negotiation between you, the HAP contract, and housing authority. So a landlord could potentially raise the rent every 6 months. Most housing authorities will only allow it under renewal of contract, which means whenever you come to term of contract with a tenant and they're due for the renewal at the 30 days, where you can either do the notice to quit, not renew, and so on. At that point, they can put in a request to raise rent, and they can do so by quite a dramatic amount. I know that I deal with a number of landlords, a lot of them actually, and they have a lot of big complexes, some 200, 300, 400 units, and in some cases they've doubled the rent. Okay. So, they want a piece of the action. Now, the reverse of this is, whenever all this plays out and does what it's going to do, in a couple of years from now, this market will bottom out, which means everything will deflate. But for now, it's pretty serious. It's more serious than it was at the height of the pandemic, because at that time, the country was frozen, so we could not see or perceive the full the full spectrum of the damage being done. But now the economy is alive, it's awake, and we have other things that are playing into this. People think when you think Ukraine, you think Russia, right? You think war. All these things still have rollbacks like a butterfly in the sky and it flaps its wings. It has an effect all the way across the world. All these economic sanctions and businesses and other things, all that affects income, and ultimately it will affect housing. So that we have that war going on, we have a pandemic, we have a high crisis for housing. As long as we keep stimulating that, and I think we're at the highest mortgage rates we've seen for a while, 4% or above. And how does that affect you as a renter or a Section 8 or a low income individual? Well, look, you're renting from people that own these homes, and their incentive is if their house is now worth 40% more than it was last year, do you really think they're going to lower their rent? They want to sell their house. And so that's the constant battle right now, is trying to stay ahead of this. So, my advice, I think, for most people that are out here fishing for answers and that may be dealing with housing, especially those that are utilizing vouchers, is if you're going to approach housing, you better make a move before the summer because at that point, it's too late. Okay. I gave that warning about a year and a half ago. A lot of people regretted not taking my advice. Um, this is fixing to get super intense. I've watched the intensity change in the market last 3 weeks, and it's getting very intense. By June and July, it's going to be unbelievable. But I'm just warning you. Better do something. So I'm going to go on, and it looks like In My Candy says that is it hard to find a place with a housing voucher? Yes, it is the hardest it's ever been in the history of HUD at this point. Charisma Dawkins, is it easier to get supporting housing in Georgia? So PSH, and I'm going to guess when you say supportive wraparound services, so that would be Section 202 if you're 62 and older, or Section 811 if you're 18 to 61. Is it easier to get it? Probably not, because that's 30% of the market. I'd say you have as about an even chance as anything. I think it's rougher for clients that are mainstream clients, just getting a typical voucher without accommodations and without wraparound services. So, what's easier or harder is where you live. The closer you are to wherever the big cities are, the more nasty this will be. Okay. And the cities in the states with the bigger populations are going to be the states that have bigger problems. So you can pretty much look at the East Coast, the West Coast, and Florida as being those areas. Also, sometimes surrounding states. When California went into it's still in it, red hot. They crushed New Mexico and Arizona badly. People figured out, well, what if I don't just move those two states and then I get it? Well, those two states have nothing left to get really anymore because of all the difficulties. There's stuff that you could possibly get a voucher there, but you see sometimes even the states nearby, the big ones, tend to be crushed by all of this. So I'm going to take a sip of coffee. We'll talk a little bit further, and then we're going to wrap it up because I don't want to make a long video because I don't think people really want to come here to hear bad news. But I think that if you're on the fence about whether or not you should participate in low-income housing and other things, if you're having that financial struggle or thought, you reacting this summer is going to be an impossibility. I would recommend whatever decision you're going to make towards getting vouchers and so on, that you act now, because the summer is not going to happen. So much so that, like I said, my office will likely close for a little while because I have no interest in, working 24 hours a day. All right, Mr. Good Redmond says, thank you, Jack. Appreciate your response. Saw a couple recently from Jackson, Florida, where the rent went from 1,000 to 1,400. Oh yeah, I talked with a landlord today. He flat out told me I'm doubling the rent. That is what it is. I have to respect the decision of the landlords I deal with, because I deal with both aisles. The renters and the landlords, and if they believe the value of their property is worth that, then that's what they do. If you double the price of my home, what do you think I would do? I would sell it. An ethical, moral issue. We're all still grown people, and we still have to do what we need to do as adults. So, of course, when you go too high, it's a big problem. But this, like I said, it's a red hot market, and there are some major concerns with that. So, so here's what I'm going to recommend for a lot of you. Number one, if you don't know what you're doing with housing, low income housing, and so on, you better get with a consultant. There are other options, clearly. You don't need to work with people like me. Okay. I'm not very expensive, but you have the option. You can call a HUD specialist. These are individuals that work for HUD. They get on the phone, you call them, they give you 5 minutes of your time. And if they can't solve it, then who knows? Your other option is 211. These are people that have their GED, they have a keyboard, they know how to search Google, and they will give you a couple of numbers. Those numbers may or may not work. It's called connecting services, right? Your third option is calling the housing authority. You'll get somebody there. They may be pleasant or they may be condescending and rude, and you'll get a few minutes at a time. And if you don't come to an absolution during that conversation for that few minutes, then that is the end of it. It is not their job to teach you. So those are the real options out there for you guys. You could research it on Google. There's plenty of articles that were written 10 and 20 years ago that are completely and utterly useless. And then, of course, the people that write those articles 10 years ago, everybody copies those. So it's misinformation reprinted with a new date. You have YouTube. There are a few of us out here that actually know a few things. The rest, as I've mentioned in many of my videos, they're not a consultant. They don't read policy, procedure, operations manual. They don't read legislations, Title 24, U.S. Code, Federal Code. What they do is they bake cakes on a Monday. They're a master baker. And then on Tuesday, they are a Section 8 master consultant. And on Wednesday, they are the inventor of fidget spinners. And they will be giving you all the housing advice you need to ruin your life. We have several eight or nine actors that pop in to make some wooden nickels off of you guys. You click their ads, you watch them, they entertain you like a children's party clown, and they tell you about how there's going to be 3 steps to a voucher. And then that's pretty much the level of content that I've seen on YouTube outside of the 400 or 500 videos that I've made. So those really are your options when it comes to researching this. There's an extensive number of things and programs out there. The main thing is, guys, rather than looking at it as an impossibility, I think what you really want to focus on is understanding how the system operates. And like any good thing that's out there, including policy, procedure, and those that are able to get vouchers sooner than other people, would be understanding how the system has holes in it, loopholes, exploits, and some housing authorities are easier than others. It very much is a game, isn't it? Because when somebody asks you to sign up for a lottery, when you think lottery, does that not imply a game? So if you're going to play the game, you better is what I always tell my clients is, if you're going to play the game in the truest sense, then you better play it better than the people that designed it. And we're looking at a system that's been, well, if you can imagine this, we don't actually change the fundamentals of what housing is for low income people. We don't change the fundamentals of what vouchers are. What we do is we started 80 years ago. We write out a few pages of rules, and then each year we add some more nonsense on top of that. And so you get this layered cake going on for generations. We don't actually ever correct the program. It's just like something that's broke. And every time a tire pops on this vehicle that gives you a voucher, what we do is we don't actually fix the tire or buy a new car. We just keep putting new tires all around the car. When the car quits running, then we put the broken car on top of a broken, maybe a broken tow truck till it breaks down. And this is what we call generations of bullshit. Okay? And the system itself. All compliments of people, young people that sit in Harvard, Penn University, stuff like that underwrite all these policies. Okay, so you got teenagers, just got their braces, 4.0, sitting up in Harvard, right? They're underwriting the policies for our nation's programs. And so these children that grew up in $4 million homes and went to Ivy League schools, they know lots of how they perfectly understand your plight to get this. You can imagine they really do care. And since we're paying them to do that, there's a much bigger incentive rather than get to the point. If they can just drag the manual out another 900,000 pages, because remember, they're getting paid, right, to do this. So we create this exasperating telephone books of bullshit, right? When you actually whittle it down to what actually is the real content of what it would require to actually navigate the system, it'd be very simple. But since we spend federal dollars to have these children underwrite all this shit, and then they send it over to companies like Nan and McCain, which will happily charge you thousands of dollars to get a little certificate out the bubblegum machine, and then you can be a fucking specialist. You see my point, guys? So this is your government at work. This is how we're addressing the economy. We have children running the show. We're handing over the companies that are for profit. And then we're operating and writing manuals that are just full of nonsense. Look, I read through a HUD manual the other day. It was 994 pages, 600 were for calculations. Look, even the dumbest asshole on the planet can add. It did not require 600 pages to do fucking calculations to figure out what rent reasonableness. But this is the nonsense that I contend with and have for a long time. So, here's the facts. You either hear it as it is a truth. Maybe the profanities offend you. I really don't care. But you hear it as a truth, or you have people sugarcoat the shit for you. And you wander around till you find somebody that tells you something that you find fancy, that's part of your plight. I'd rather y'all just hear it straight, okay? Because if you can't accept reality, then you're living in a plastic world. Trust me, it's not all unicorn and rainbows, and that's why I'm trying to explain, guys. Look, it's a tough system. It's rigged. My job is to help clients unrig it. That's what I do. Again, I'm not here to sell anybody anything other than what it really is. And you've got to see it for what it is. That's, sometimes that's the perfect reason to use profanities, is because it does express true intent. It describes the emotion of the moment, really, of how I feel about some of this. How else could you describe it? Because it won't be pleasantly. So I'm going to move down here in the comments now that it's starting to heat up a little bit. Good Redmond. Okay, Baba T Girl, $2,500 a month for 3 bedrooms in Boston. That's quite a note. I've heard those numbers go to $5,500 in New York and San Francisco. In my case, most apartment complexes don't take Section 8% participants. Yes, we've seen a decrease in the market of around 22% now. So that's another 20% of the market that exited in the past 12 months. And it's because it's preferable to go after high market rates for people that have jobs, and also to sell the homes they have because now they're worth a great deal more. Bobby T. Girl goes on to say, do the new modern buildings accept Section 8 in Massachusetts? The wise way to play that, Bobby T, would be to call the city planning office and see how many landlords are utilizing rich tax credit properties. In other words, they're getting ready to build, or they bought a building, they're fixing to update that building, or they're going to build it. And that would be the fastest way for you to be the first one in the parking lot when they're done building it. Why would you know that? Because city planning, you can do an open public request. They can give you a list of all the buildings that intend on being low income before they ever want to tell anybody. So it's a really, really slick way of you being the first one, ready to go. Amy Guzman, I'm getting my voucher tomorrow at 2:00. Well, I congratulate you on that. That is a hell of a mission to get one, and I'm always thrilled to hear when somebody's been able to get one fairly and honestly. So I'm glad you're going to get that fresh start. Choose wisely and where you choose to use that, and don't eliminate that private landlords. There are lots of good private landlords, especially on Facebook Marketplace. Deborah Payne, hello, good morning, thank you. In my candy, right, it don't require it, Jay. Right, I don't require it. Sonia Grinstaff says, I received an email today that I was denied housing because I was not able to provide an affidavit for homelessness. There's no such a thing as an affidavit. You could technically walk into any homeless shelter to the reception counter. My name is Nancy. Here's my bag, a trash bag of clothes. Can I get a homeless letter because I can't get an ID? It's quite that simple. No proof is required. But guys, look, do you know any homeless people that have a rope tied to a metal filing cabinet that roll down the fucking road with letters in it and affidavits? No. That nonsense is they tell you shit like that it's a deterrent. Because what does it do? In principle, what it does, it gets in your mind and it says to you, it's a great way to have you say fuck it in your head. And so it's important, guys, that you be able, and I know you know this, Sonia, just like an insurance company, these guys are going to reject. So if they're going to play the game with you, then play it back. And you must insist. And so at that point, homeless letters, you type in the word, for instance, I live in Houston, homeless letter. Look, they're even published on the internet. You can get a church pastor to sign. It's good enough. There's actually written in the part of the COC manuals, operation manuals, that a city leader, okay, including churches, could sign the dotted line. Now, the reason they don't publish that is because everybody would run down to the church or the homeless shelter and do so. Now, that might not be economical in big cities like LA and New York, where you have, 8-story homeless shelters and where they're more stingy about that. But any country town with a shelter with 200 people in it, you probably walk into reception, excuse me, I need to be able to get my ID. Unfortunately, I can't do anything without this letter. And they'll cut one right there, sign the bottom, and you're done deal. They only get sophisticated about it when you're in the primary big cities. So yeah, don't ever let folks get in your head about that, because they're all trained to do that, and that's part of how they thin the herd. How do you control a massive crowd of people that want something? You create conversations full. First, you can get on the phone and just be. You could talk to people badly. You could create a lot of rejection, because they know in principle that most people, since babies, are taught that if they're told no, no means no. Look, with this, no means yes. Something that my older clientele has learned, especially my seniors. They don't take no for an answer. They'll keep calling back until the person that answering the phone goes, you know what? I've just had enough of that woman. Just give her what she wants. So I have clients like that. Some of them that have mental defects that makes them do that, and they actually make very good clients because they never accept no, and they'll continue to be a rock in the housing authority's shoe until they get what they want. I've actually had clients that have angered and upset the whole office at a housing authority to the point of like, just give her what she wants so she'll go away. See, there's a point of pressure with these people. And sometimes it doesn't need to be diplomatic or even through a consultant like me. Sometimes you literally can just be a rock in the shoe. You keep that rock in your shoe long enough, at first it hurts, but a year later, you've got to amputate the foot. So you see how that progression of pain works. I had another client on the street. She did a media packet. She just said, well, you don't want to give me what I want. That's fine. I'm going to do a media packet to 100 news agencies all within the state, and then we'll see how your reputation suffers. Quietly issued a voucher. How does that work out? Well, it's simple. Pressure. Nobody wants to have their good nonprofit or their housing authority dragged through the shitter, and that's exactly what that woman did to them. She applied pressure in an unbelievable way. Now, I'm not suggesting these tactics are probably the best way to handle things, but occasionally they do work, because people love to defend their reputations, especially the ones that are actually devilish about this. We have lots of housing authorities that have done lots of things that aren't inappropriate, and the last thing they want is an investigation that would make them open up their files, because then they start to realize this isn't the first time this housing authority has violated a federal law or federal code. And so it's preferable to get rid of the clients that know how to fight. That's another thing I work with clients with, is teaching you how to weaponize your case against these fucking people so you get what you need. This is not supposed to be a fair system. It's not supposed to be an honest one. They certainly don't care about your story. They don't care if you're in a wheelchair or 100. They only care that their policies are in place. And if you don't match their delusional policies to get these things, then you don't get anything. But some of you have realized that if you're willing to bring hell on earth, then there are possibilities. I certainly deliver lots of pain when I deal with clients. We use every tactic in the book within the legal limits of the law. Okay, same way a good lawyer would get somebody off on murder. He knows the attorney would know every loophole to jump through. Now, because you understand how to get through these holes and loopholes and get around the system and make the system work for you. Now, does that mean you're breaking the law? No, it just means that you're really smart. You're smarter than the average bear, and it means that you're being able to get through this process. Okay, that's what it requires. The days of this being a situation where you walk in and you plead your case are well over with. A lot of you have those fantasies about housing authorities. I'll just go sit there and tell them my story. Look, honey, they've heard everybody's story. They got people in wheelchairs with their feet rotting off. There's nothing new you can invent to say to these people. They're not going to give you a voucher because you simply have a disability. Look, 99% of the people that apply for vouchers are old and disabled. You'd have to invent something new. And that's the point. It's not so much what's wrong with you, but it's more about how many things are wrong with you. If you're a veteran, okay, if you're a veteran, you're disabled, you're 62, you're low income, you start meeting all those high preferences, then what does your case do beyond the next guy? It's just like a resume. It gives you more qualifications to be considered high. And the more preferences you have, those are more strings they can pull from. If the housing authority for January has vouchers, but they're only for domestic violence victims, you'd make sure you want to have a string to that. You see my point? Is so it's not a singular thing that can make you successful in your plight to get a voucher or deal with low income housing. It's the number of things wrong with your life. Matching the course and the plot of their policies, their rules, their procedures, understanding HIMS system, which is Homes Information Management System, HUD-VAS, Section 202, Section 811, Section 504. There's a lot of different things out there. We talk about that constantly, the sheer variety of funding and how that is attached to the voucher and what would fundamentally change how you would go up and down a list. A lot of the reasons housing authorities no longer give numbers is because here's what you didn't know. Talk about that for a minute. You apply, right? You get in there. Oh, I'm on the list. They gave me number 5,000. Well, here's the problem. The next person that's got more problems than you gets in the list. You just went down one. So they quit giving out numbers. Why? Because you started in 2015. You were number 5,000. Now you're number 8,000. And so what happens? You snap and lose your mind on the phone, and then other bad things might happen, like a can of gas, a match, and the housing authority. So they quit giving out numbers because they realize. And the other tactic is sometimes they do give you numbers, but here's what they do. They're called pool numbers. And you know why they call them pool numbers? They'll say, oh, well, Miss Sally, you're number 50. So you get excited. But what does it actually do psychologically to you? It gets you to stop calling, right? You're number 50. What you didn't know is you and about 13,000 other people are number 50. You see my point? And how pooling works is you actually have 30 or 40 clients that actually have real numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Then they reach what they call the impossible number that's really high, like maybe number 108. 108 is the other 10,000 people. But because you perceive the number 108 as being high and you're going to be there next week, you quit calling, your worries are over. But about 2 years later, you started calling, well, what the hell? Why have I not moved? Oh, honey, you never moved and you were never really 108. you just guys have no idea. So many different ways they play this game with y'all. And you really just, y'all chomp it up, like bait, like fish. And I've tried to explain that to the most educated clients down to the people that just had a simple upbringing. And I find that people that are simpler tend to get it better. That sometimes things are not as straightforward as they appear. All right, so let's go back in these comments right here. Anybody that wants to object, please do. I have plenty of states that follow me. I have plenty of housing authority. At present in my analytics, I see that at least 8 or 9 .govs follow me. These are state, maybe a state attorney, maybe it's people at the housing authority. And I certainly have hundreds of housing authority employees over the years come to the channel. Only about 3% disagree with what I say, begrudgingly. I've only had one lady get nasty. Go, oh, well, we don't. I'm like, well, that's fine. You're in the mountains of Billings, Montana. Of course, nothing goes wrong there. I totally agree with you. I'm a complete jerk for making these videos and helping people. But most of the other housing authority employees will tell you they're a farmer. I tell you, almost everything that I'm telling you is absolutely real. That's a fact, Jack. All right, so going on down. In my candy, many neighborhoods are bad. Here is hard to find affordable housing. Absolutely. Sandygrass stuff says, thank you, Jay. I appreciate you. Good Redman, being a stone in the shoe probably works better than having a pizza delivered to the office. You know what, Good Redman? That brings up that book that was written, and also a Section 8 man. Now, I'm not Section 8 man. That's a guy that's actually, he made a DVD. He was a landlord that owned a bunch of properties, and he made him a Section 8 video about 3-4 years ago, I think, and called himself Section 8 man, selling DVDs. And he recommends that if you'd like to get that number one spot, you just go and cut a check to the Pizza Hut. You bring a hot pie up there, and of course they'll commit fraud and give you a voucher. They got another lady, she wrote a book. After she plagiarized the hell out of my 10-year career and then everything she could find on Google, she surmised the world's shittiest book I've ever seen. You know what? It's more like and I'm not going to say who it is, okay? But just fucking nonsense. I mean, it wouldn't help anybody. What you bought, that book, that silly shit that you put on Amazon, honestly, you've got to be super desperate to buy that. You'd have been better off really buying a pamphlet at an airport. I don't see that she's ever No professional degree. Just loosely scraped whatever she could find and just wrote some shitty book. So I don't know. I've had clients tell me they bought it and they were pretty upset, especially when the book starts with three tips and tricks to get a voucher. You hear the words tips and tricks to get a voucher, run for your life. Okay, that's the first thing that tells you they're an idiot. All right, so I've enjoyed talking with y'all and keeping it spicy. I decided to have another profanity laced video, but hey, you know what? We got to do something different. Nobody wants to watch a middle-aged man with a shaved head sit here and talk about Section 8, and I keep it spicy. So I think we went a little bit off the deep end in this video, but that's all right. Sometimes you just got to be natural, because I find that when you present yourself and the truth is the way that it should be, the people read it, even good Christian folks, church folks, whatever. I don't really worry about it. I just want to state the facts. So, the main thing, guys, is if you're on the fence about housing and getting it and so on, you need to react before the summer, because otherwise it's going to be nothing but tears and no glory. So that's just a fair warning. And you know what? These warnings I give once a year, go back in those videos and tell me how many times I was wrong. Not once in my career was I wrong about a warning. This summer, it will play out. And I've always said, humans are a lot like ants. When the butterflies are out and the sun is shining, everybody's going to want that voucher. Well, you know what? When summer hits, look, you're way too late to the game. You're way too late. People that started back in January, February, March, April, these are the people that got it right. The people that just showed up for the party at the end of the night at midnight, well, it's over with. So it's as simple as I can put it for you. All right, guys, I've enjoyed talking with y'all and just kind of chitter-chatting, and we'll get with y'all in another couple of days. My office will be closed starting tomorrow all the way to Monday. If you have casework with me, I will continue to work on it. But this has been a very constraining 3 months. And as y'all many know, I work extraordinary hours with an extraordinary number of people. And unfortunately, I can only keep pace at these wild hours for about 3 months at a time. And then I have to go take a break, sometimes for 4 days, sometimes a week, to recharge. And January through March is always astronomically crazy. And so I see it's time to take a break, and then I will readdress Monday, and then we'll go another 3 months, but sometimes you just got to step away from this, take a break, So, all right, Joseph Pera. Hi, Jay. Mr. Barrett, how are you today? I'm sure you left me a message. A lot of people leave messages today, Joseph. So I'll get to it today. Don't worry. I got consults tonight in about an hour or so, and I'll get to you. Like I said, for those of you that are already clients, I'll get to you. But I'm really not taking any new clients for the next 4 days. Just got to get some rest here. In my Candy, I emailed you. No problem, Miss Candy. Just keep in mind, guys, I receive in essence anywhere from 9,000 to 15,000 emails a month. Okay. Do me a favor. Please don't write life stories. Be concise. If you want to know things, ask, but do not write your whole life history. A lot of that stuff that you guys are writing in these emails is irrelevant to the fact of you getting a voucher. If you stated to me, hey, this is how much money I made, this is the age that I am, this is the diagnosis or disability, or just saying, hey, I've got a disability, I don't need a 13,000 page menu of all the aches and pains, okay? That's not going to change the position of you getting something. So keep the information as concise as possible, because nobody wants to read that. It's like a novel. Some of you guys are writing novels, and that's too much information. It doesn't help you get a voucher, So anyways, guys, I've enjoyed talking with you, and we'll do it again in a couple of days. All right. Good night.